Let's watch Fox News The 5 as they discuss the recent bombshell report that came out about Biden, what it means, what it doesn't pertaining to his mental health, and what Tarlov has to say about it all. And we'll be back after with the additional context.
People are going to be much more skeptical of what they're being told by people that are close to candidates. I mean, this is someone who throughout his career has had a very tight inner circle, but the extremeness of that seems unprecedented from looking at this. And this article is going to be tough for people to ignore because it's so well sourced and reported. You know, it's not someone saying like, oh, you know, I saw Joe Biden walked in the wrong direction or something, right? Like this is a lot of people, and they have a lot of people on the record, you know, going in both directions of it. And Democrats saying things like, I think it was Senator Heinrich, that he spent more time with President Obama than he did with President Biden. And he was much less senior then, right? He just came in and Obama was giving him much more time.
When I read this report, I was honestly pretty shocked. And now I don't think it's what MAGA is trying to portray it as. I wasn't shocked because, oh my God, Biden actually does have dementia. Like, it's not that, and we'll get into it. But it was a bit odd, at least the willingness in which the Democratic Party was ready to shoot itself in the foot for loyalty to Biden, to where Biden didn't even show that same loyalty to the Democrats, where now that the election is over, it seems that a lot of those inside the party are coming out to say, yeah, we had our concerns even as far back as like day one, right? We had our worries from aides to senators, but that nobody wanted to voice this. Nobody wanted to be the guy that comes out and says it and maybe makes the stink, right? Which is, it makes it even more egregious, however, though, that Biden, knowing all of this, decided to go against his initial promise of being a transitional one-term president. Like, if you know you're pretty much having to do this smoke and mirrors to keep the media concern down and all of this, why, after making it through the term, would you then say like, yeah, let's like get all of this like ungodly level of media scrutiny that comes with the national campaign and run it back, which is what this is about, right? I don't think he was unable to do the job. That's not what the report says or hints at all. And I mean, we saw that he was able to do the job. This is why you can't let MAGA like form these narratives, right? 7 major pieces of legislation: strengthening us abroad, strengthening NATO, negotiating hostage deals with Russia. These are things he couldn't do if, like, according to the MAGA spin, if he had dementia or anything MAGA was saying was true. But what it is saying, and what was shocking to me, is knowing he was in a diminished state that obviously voters would latch onto, that obviously would have negative effects electorally. It's like, why did we throw our party away for this man who, while yeah, probably the strongest legislative president of our generation, was absolutely not owed all of that, and then didn't show the same loyalty back to us to keep his original promise, especially when he knew like, hey, I will be a weak candidate if I run again because of the optics.
This is consistent with what I think a lot of people feel, in the level of betrayal that Democrats, and myself included, underestimated that average voters feel about it. It's one thing to say these are the accomplishments, and I think a lot of people feel pretty positive about certain things that the administration did, but they wanted both, right? They wanted a candidate and they wanted the accomplishments together. And it's very clear that the Biden folks could have probably avoided a lot of this if he had dropped out a year in advance and said, we're going to have a primary. If Kamala is the winner, which I think is feasible, fine. If it's somebody else, that's good too.
And it sucks because it was so clearly the right move to make, and Biden not sticking to his guns and choosing himself originally stains his legacy in a way that will probably be remembered even more so than his accomplishments. That, and with the genocide in Gaza, obviously he's not going to be looked back on as fondly as he could have been, because most of his missteps came at the end. But if we're just measuring up accomplishments, right, it's not even close, which is why the Democrats were up so big in polls mid-2023. Biden successfully steered us out of the pandemic, did so without a recession like was assumed would happen, right? He recouped our lost jobs and still was creating millions of them. Wages were up, outpacing inflation. More people were insured than ever before. More student loan debt had been forgiven than ever before. We were in a very strong position abroad. NATO was stronger than it had ever been. Ukraine was pushing back successfully. Had Biden at this point stuck to being a transitional president, had we held a primary, I feel like we would have ran away with this election, as we could have taken his accomplishments that in no way Trump can match up to. And at that point, Trump would have had this stink of COVID. Biden would have had the stink of COVID effects. But we would have been able to turn the page on that because of new candidate, new administration. But instead, we allowed Biden to take these attacks on him as a candidate, which weakened our electability as a party, weakened us down the ballot as a party. And then he showed the inability to push back against MAGA attack lines on his accomplishments. He was unable to go into the venues to push back, like these podcasts and stuff. And had we had a candidate that was a stronger orbiter from the jump, like Gavin Newsom, as much as I hate Gavin Newsom, like Gavin Newsom, for instance, I think we would have landslided this election.
But you've been noticing as well as folks that worked on the campaign do interviews like on Pod Save America, or there was a forum and Jen O'Malley Dillon was there, and also Tony Fabrizio from Donald Trump's team, that they're not giving satisfactory answers to Democrats, that it feels like there's no apologies to be made. They keep saying, I wouldn't have done anything different.
And this one I've been pondering a lot because I mean, I did quickly recognize this was a problem, even like a little bit before the election, but then after the election, yes. But I wanted to know the why, right? Like, why did this become a problem? Like, how did we let this happen? And I think another reason Democrats didn't want to do these kinds of podcasts, these kinds of venues to the extent that Trump was the difference in standards in which the two parties are held when they enter these venues. Where Trump goes on podcasts, they ask him no critical questions. They almost want to like joke and be buddy-buddy with him. I mean, he's like a funny, entertaining guy. They want to have like that kind of vibe. If he lies or says insane things, they're just going to laugh with him. They're gonna be like, that's Trump. You know, nobody's going to push back on it. They're like, it's Trump being Trump, you know? And then nobody in his base will ever speak negatively of the appearance. Nobody on the right will ever share clips of it and be like, look, Trump lied here. And then nobody, and if people on the left, they do it, everyone on the right is just going to say it's clipped out of context. It's fake news. It doesn't matter if it's a 10-minute clip, it was clipped out of context, right? But when Democrats go on these venues, they're going to get asked these critical questions. If they say something that even sounds untrue or insane, it doesn't make sense to like, just like, yeah, that makes sense, right? They have to then explain it. They have to go into detail on why it's true and all this. And then everyone on social media, even their own base, is going to be policing the answers in the clips. The right is going to be sharing like, oh, look how stupid they are. Look how bad their answers are. And then the left is going to be like, she didn't even mention this and how dare she? And, so it's like this probably scared Democrats about the possible blowback from doing this kind of setting, especially when your options for them were Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, which again, neither of them are strong orbiters, which only further allowed this unfair battle in getting our information out, our platform, our messaging out to the masses, all of which I'm hoping the party understands and changes moving forward. But never let MAGA take this report and pretend that, one, it's a vindication into what they were saying, that Biden has dementia and was unfit to do the job. It's not what the report says. If they're saying that's what the report says, they've never read the report themselves. They're probably taking the word of someone who also probably never read the report themselves. And just remind them, 7 trademark pieces of legislation, multiple hostage negotiations, strengthening of NATO, multiple deals like the unilateral coalition against the Houthis that Biden negotiated. You're not doing this if you have dementia. You're not doing this if you're unfit to be president, right? And then you can say the report clearly even says like, hey, what happened was he was showing the diminished mental capacity or capability that is like natural with age. He was looking like a old man, like a confused old man, right? In the way that old people do. They don't operate on the same level, and that this caused those inside the party to be worried about how this would look to the voters. This is what the report says, and don't let MAGA pretend that they care about this either or think it's a big issue, because they literally just elected a man who was the same age that Biden was when he was elected. So we'll be going through the same things. We already see things of that. Like he said, we won the American Revolution by controlling the airports. He confuses people all the time. He confuses leaders. Like Trump does a lot of the same things, was the same age when Biden was elected, will be the same age when he's off. So MAGA doesn't care about any of this. They also threw a fit when Biden was removed from the ballot. A lot of Republicans tried to force him back on the ballots. So they don't think it's an actual problem. They only care, and this is important because it makes it completely unserious, they only care in so much that it can be used as an attack line to be like, aha, Democrats bad. Which again, that's just not serious then.